Okay, what we're going to talk about this evening is how to practice landings. Um, so I found this topic on YouTube, and I have to give them credit. I didn't know you could do this, but it's pretty interesting. So practicing landing is always a pain in the butt, especially if you're starting on the ground. You have to take off, fly the pattern. It's very time consuming. It's not very productive because every time you come around, you're in a slightly different place or attitude or what have you. Everything's different every time. So what we're going to talk about here is how to set up your Microsoft Flight Simulator to place you several miles from the runway threshold, lined up with the runway, and allow you to fly that landing over and over and over again until you're comfortable with being able to land the airplane. This has a lot of advantages. One, it saves a lot of time because as soon as you land or crash or have to wave off or whatever, you can just reset your scenario and it'll start right up again, and you'll be back up in the air at 1,000 feet in altitude, 3 miles from the runway, etc. I don't know if it's always 3 miles, but I can tell you, flying my Aermaki jet, it's 3 miles at 1,000 feet. So, without further ado, this is very easy to do actually. It's kind of cool, but I didn't know you could do it. So, I'm going to practice landings at the Groton Airport in Connecticut. Let me change the time of day, middle of the day, and I'm going to select my depart. I don't want to select a departure airport. I'm going to select an arrival airport without selecting a departure airport. And that's the key to this whole thing. So if I pick Groton Airport, it automatically places me lined up. You can see on the map here, it's placing me. I'm here. I didn't put myself there. It put me there. It's got me all lined up with one of the runways at Groton, and you can change that runway. So let me back out some more here. Here we go. Okay, so right now the approach is to the northwest on runway 33. If I wanted to change that for an approach towards the northeast to runway 5, I just come over here to the right. I select runway 5 and I select that as my arrival. And now it has moved my airplane's position, so I'm on 050, 3 miles out at 1,000 feet, lined up with the runway. And if you look over to the right here, you can see it's marked as a nav aid, but it has me, my latitude, longitude, my altitude, 960 feet. Type custom. So that's it. Don't pick a departure airport, pick an arrival airport, and it will automatically line you up for one of the runways, and you can change that runway for practicing different approaches if you like. Okay, so now it's let's change the time to the middle of the day, and we're going to go fly, and I'm going to show you how this works. So I'm flying the Aermaki MB339 Pan, which is the aerobatic version of the jet, and I'm a little uncomfortable landing this plane still. You know, I'm working on how I want to do it. By the way, okay, we're going to look at a couple other things too when we get there. This is also a great way to find out what you need to have done by the time you are lined up on your final approach. In other words, how should your trim be set so you're not fighting the yoke or the joystick the whole way down? So the airplane will mostly fly itself on the approach at the right speed. That helps enormously. What throttle settings work best? to maintain the glide slope. And if you do like I have done, and you go to the assist options and you have your glide slope indicated visually, that will help you enormously in establishing the right runway picture in your mind, so you know what the runway should look like as you make your approach, and so that you're not coming in too high or too low. So let's go without further ado. Let's load her up here. Now the first thing I'm going to do as soon as this thing begins is I'm going to hit the pause brake key on the keyboard, and I'm going to pause the scenario, and I'll be hanging in the air, not moving, and I will get everything prepped the way I would want it, the way I would have had it if I were doing a normal approach, and we'll talk about a couple of those things you should be paying attention to. Okay, so we're at New London, so you can see I'm lined up on runway 5. Flaps are down, gear is down, so they've already got you in landing configuration. But you're going to find that your throttle is not really set properly. You know, mine is to the stops. I could move it part way up. That might help, so I don't lose altitude right at the beginning. I'm going to have to adjust my trim to where I would want it, but that's one of the beauties of this, because you fly this landing over and over, and I've been experimenting with my trim, and I know exactly where to set it. So I have the right approach speed. So let's go do that right now. Okay. All right. I just hit pause brake. Now you can see. I'm going to turn this volume down a little bit. You can see the. I have turned on the pathway, and the way you do that is you go to escape, assistance, navigation aids, and turn on landing path, and I find that very helpful. You know, I'm not going to do it all the time, but for this sort of thing, for practicing landings, I think it's a good thing, at least initially, to help reinforce in your mind what that approach should look like, what the angle on the runway should look like as you make the approach, so you have it cemented in your mind. So when you're too high or too low, you'll recognize it right away. Okay, so I'm not changing this because it's already set. We're going to resume. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set my throttle where I want it while I'm stationary here. I'm going to set it, you know, now I'm looking right here at my engine RPM here, my jet engines. And I'm going to set it right at the bottom of the green arc. It seems like a pretty good place. I'm going to come down here and turn on my anti-skid, which I normally would. What that does is it spins up your wheels, so when you land, your wheels are already spinning and you don't leave rubber all over the runway and wear your tires out. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. Up here you can see my trim indicator where my mouse is. And I have, through experience, I'm going to set that trim pretty high up. So this is kind of a, notice my angle of attack changes while I'm doing that too. That's interesting. So that's about right. And what that will do for me is it'll help the airplane pretty much fly the descent path itself at the right speed. I'm looking for about 100 knots on my approach. In this airplane, with full flaps, that works very well. So, all right. Now I'm going to back out again and get the right view here. I might come up just in. Now that doesn't work because I can't see the runway then. At least not yet. Okay, here we go. I'm going to start things up again. Notice my nose. I actually have it trimmed. We'll see. Now I'm slowing. I'm at 150 knots. I think I got my trim up a little too high. And I'm going too fast. But that'll change. I'm watching my airspeed slowly bleed off. I'm tweaking my trim in. So now I'm basically hands off on the yoke. I have the trim pretty close to where I want it. My airspeed's now down to 110 knots, which is good. Shortly that too fast will go away. And it might be too fast, but it's only a slight bit too fast. Alright, there we go. So now I'm pulling back. I'm going to add a little throttle, because I don't want to go too slow. I'm adding that throttle early, and I'm only adding a little bit. You know, with spooling up a jet engine, you don't want to add too much too fast. So I'm going to bring it up to 70, 75. And notice I'm maintaining that 100 mile an hour and 100 knot landing speed. Looking good here. 90. We're down. I'm going to deploy my air brake, which is basically a barn door, and put my brakes on. And you can tell I've been practicing. But that's exactly what I needed to do. So that's pretty much the end of our demonstration here. So I think this is really helpful. I think you'll find if you do this, especially when you're flying unfamiliar airplanes for the first time, like, you know, that new turboprop, or when you get to it, a Learjet, you can work on your landings until you get it perfect. And you improve very quickly this way. So let's say I wanted to redo that. If I didn't get it quite right, I can hit escape and hit restart. Okay, continue, and it's going to take me right back up to the approach again. So, and it's a very short reload time, because it doesn't have to reload the airplane or any of the scenery. And boom, here I am, ready to try again. I hope this helps. I think it will. I recommend you use it, because I'm sure going to use it now that I know about it. Have a great evening.